here we are on a Sunday. It's about 90 degrees. That's why I'm freeing the nipple on camera. But as you can see behind us here, the garden's doing great. Except there's not much in there because I have no way to start my seeds. And by the time you get your seeds started, you're already kind of behind the ball. So what I'm going to be doing today is putting up a polycarbonate greenhouse that I got off Amazon. Hope you enjoy. All right guys, so I already got a lot of the pieces cut here, and I'm going to be staggering the joints on this because I'm going to install some eyelids that I can drag this around with the tractor. Originally I wanted to do concrete and I was going to put a drain in it and pitch it right out to the ditch, but in case I ever want to move it, if I have different plans for this part of the yard, so I'm going to be doing a pressure treated deck with hemlock flooring on top of it, spaced about 3/4 to an inch so that water can run through. And I'm going to cover or wrap the whole bottom in landscape fabric so that water can drain through, but obviously grass won't grow up. So here's a lot of the pieces already cut, and I'll explain in 1 second a little bit further in detail. I'm staggering the joints on these ends so that when I pull on it with the tractor, it's not just going to rip the first rim board out. So I'm doubling the rim board and I'm cutting the joists different lengths so that I can stagger it together. And I'll show you in 1 minute once it's all put together. Okay guys, so here's the deck all screwed together, and if you look at this joint here, you can see that one butts into that, like that, and our next board is going to cover over the end like that so that the entire structure is tied together. That way when I put these bolts here through it, they're going to go through like that. When the tractor pulls on it, it has more resistance against wanting to just break apart and pull that rim board off because it's tied together in two different ways instead of just screwed straight in through the butt. So I'm going to take some of these 4-inch structural screws now, and I'll go around and tag the frame together right before I put this rim board on to make sure everything's going to hold. We have it all screwed together, the framing's all set, and as you can see here, I set these bolts in, that way I could drag it around with the tractor. And if you're going to do that, make sure that the opening or the separation in the circle is at the bottom. That way when I hook a chain on, I'm hooking on the strongest part to lift that there. So the next step of the process before we nail the landscape fabric to the bottom is going to be making sure that this is a nice level surface, and as we put the level on here, we can see that this corner is high. We put it on this side. This corner is high. And then over here, this back corner is a little higher than that front corner. So this is our highest corner here, and that's our lowest point there. So what we're gonna do now is just take the pickaxe, dig around and cut the sod around it so I have an idea of how big it is. Loosen up the dirt a little bit, and then I'll go get the tractor and just kind of scrape this area till it's close to flat, or I at least get all the sod cut off here. All right, now that we got that all edged up, I'm gonna grab the tractor, try and flip this thing over, and then use the bucket to kind of backblade it and at least tear that sod up because it's too hot to do it all with the pickaxe. All right, so now we have the landscape fabric all nailed around the edges of the frame. So we're ready to flip that back over. We're gonna rough cut all of our pieces a little bit big, and then we'll bring the circular saw over and just lop them all off in one shot. So here we go. Okay, so now that we have the form in the ground, or the deck, and it's got the landscape fabric on the bottom, we just check the diagonals to make sure that it's square so that the flooring doesn't get all weird. You want to take a fairly straight piece first. We have all of our pieces here rough cut to length. You can see it's big on either side, and we're going to trim that off after. So we want to start with a fairly straight piece, and we want to go perfectly flush and run right down it, screw it off. And then this is going to be our piece that we're going to use as a spacer. So we're going to stick this one in here next on edge. That'll give us a 1-inch gap. Then we're going to stick the next board over tight to it, screw it, and move down like so until the deck is completed. So we'll do a quick time lapse of that. Okay, now that the deck is all on, as you guys can see, we have 1-inch gaps all the way through. When I got about 4 off the end, it's not exactly an inch. I had to cheat them to about 1 1/8 inches just to make sure that I ended with a full board here, because I didn't want to end with a little strip or a ripped off piece. So at the end you can kind of just cheat it and you can't even really tell it's 1/8 of an inch. So now we're going to go grab a cord and the circular saw, and we're going to lop these 2 ends off and call that good. Alright guys, well that's it for this week. I know I was going to try and get the greenhouse up, but I'm just cooked by the sun. I got sweat dripping off everything on my body, and I'm just going to call that good. You can see we just cut the ends clean here. Everything's nice and level, and that's just going to be what it is for this week. Hope you guys stay tuned. Next week we'll put up the greenhouse. I mean, there's not really any rush. It's too hot right now to use it anyway, so we got our base down, everything's secure. Bolts are in so we can move it by the tractor, and the landscape fabric's down. So I think this is really good. We're gonna screw the greenhouse right to it, that way it can't blow away. If you guys like this video, please give it a thumbs up, follow, subscribe, anything. I appreciate it. Thanks guys.